Hi, welcome once again to Drafting 263 3D CAD with from Blue Mountain Community College. We're going to go ahead and finish out Chapter 5 with that center ball joint that begins on page 5-13. So I'm going to go ahead and give you my screen, and we will work through this together. You may have noticed as we go through this that the directions are getting to be a little bit less step-by-step. We're going to be building our skills as we go, so we're going to start working a bit more independently from the textbook. So the first thing we want to do, check your units, make sure they are inch, pound, second. And now we are going to be drawing on the front plane, so click on the front plane and open a new sketch. And what we're going to do is we're going to create that profile there in the middle of page 5-14. And we're going to do this using circles and lines and sketch fillets. So let's start with noticing that this part is symmetric about a vertical centerline axis. So we are actually going to mirror this object around that center line. Let's start by creating a couple of center lines. Let's start by creating a horizontal center line. And the length really isn't that important. And now at the center of that, let's go ahead and put in a vertical center line. So find its midpoint and then go above it, click, drag down through, click and double click and say OK. Let's go ahead now and put in a circle centered at the origin. Not too big, but doesn't have to be teeny tiny either. And click OK. And again, we're only going to build the left end of this piece. We will build the right end by mirroring it around that vertical center line. So we've got our circle. Let's put in our horizontal line from the edge of this circle we drew all the way over to the center line here. Make sure your line is horizontal. Oops. Click, click, and double click and say OK. Now I'm going to put in a couple more lines. I'm going to be a little careful not to get too close to things like quadrant points and centers because I don't really want those automatic relations put in like that. So if that happens, just click undo. Try it again. I'm going to click, drag horizontally, and click, drag vertically, and click, and now drag over to that center line. Click and double click and go say OK. So we've got our basic shape in. Now you'll notice I've got some extra pieces. We're going to trim those out now. I'm going to trim out the bottom half of this circle, and I'm going to trim off this internal piece right there. And trim to closest was just fine, so I didn't change that. So now my basic shape of my left end is in. Let's go ahead and add some dimensions. My curve has a radius of 0.368. My piece has got a length from this centerpiece to this center line of 1.250 inches. I have got a vertical dimension from this line to my center point there of 0.125 inches. and a vertical dimension from this line to that center point of 0.275 inches, and a horizontal dimension from this line to my center point there of 0.475 inches. All right, we're close. That's all my dimensions that I need. Now I just need to put in those fillets. And we've been doing fillets in the three-dimensional space, but we can also do those in the sketch space. Right here using this sketch fillet command, and what we're going to do is I'm going to click on that, and it tells me to select a vertex to fillet. So I'm going to fillet that corner and that corner and that corner, and they all have a 0.05 inch fillet radius. And so I'm just going to go ahead and click OK. And it put in a dimension for me. I'll click OK again so I can move that dimension so that it's a little less cluttered. And you can see that my part looks an awful lot like the left-hand part pictured there. Let's make sure that I've got all my dimensions right. That should be 1.25. That should be 0.475. My radius should be 0.368. That dimension should be 0.275, and that one 0.125. And my piece is fully defined. So now I am going to mirror this piece about that center line. But before I do that, I actually want to bring this endpoint back to that center line. So I'm going to click and drag on that endpoint, and that brings it back to there. There we go. So both of those endpoints now are on this center line. Now what we're going to do is we're going to select mirror entities. And the first thing it asks for is the entities to mirror. And I'm just going to kind of lasso all of those, that entire shape. And it didn't get all of it, so I'll just click on everything it missed. And now we're going to mirror about. So I clicked in that box, and I'm going to click here on that center line. And you can see that SolidWorks is telling me it's going to mirror my shape across this vertical line, and that looks like what I want, so I'm going to say OK. And there we go. Now I want to look at my tree manager though. Okay. And now I am going to see if I can find my horizontal center line. I have lost my horizontal center line, so let's just go ahead and put that back in because I'm going to need it, because that is my revolve axis. Okay. There we go. Now let's go ahead, go out to features. We are going to do a revolved base. So we're going to do a revolved boss base. And we are going to we're going to first select our axis of revolution, which is this guy. And we're going to do a blind condition and 360 degrees. And that looks about right. So we're going to say OK. And there is our part. Okay, let's go ahead now and save this. I'm going to save this guy as Chapter 5, Center Ball Joint. Okay. Now we're going to create a new work plane. And we are going to do this by clicking on plane, except I'm not finding planes. I'm going to go to Insert, Reference Geometry, Plane. Oh, there it is. It's on the ribbon too, up there next to curves on the right end in the reference geometry. So I'm going to do this. Now from the Feature Manager tree, we want to click on, so we're going to go to the Feature Manager tree and click on Right Plane. And mine has disappeared down to here. Wait. Okay, I've got something going on here. I'm going to back out for a second. Do that again. Reference Geometry Plane. In the Feature Manager tree, I want to select Right Plane. I want to select an offset distance of 1.250. And say OK. That gave me now a new plane on which to work. And now we're doing something called creating a derived sketch. So we're going to hold down our Control key and select that plane. And my sketch 1, which in my case is sketch 2, but that plane and your sketch. And now from the Insert menu, let go of your Control key, and we're going to select Derived Sketch. And that put a copy of my sketch now on that other plane. Isn't that handy? What we want to do now is add a couple of relations. We want to make the top plane and the line, this line, to be collinear. So let's select that line. Okay, let's try starting with the top plane and this line. There we go. So select your plane first and then your line. That will open up the add relation box, and then select collinear. And say OK. Now select your front plane and this center line and make those to be collinear and say OK. And now my sketch is fully defined. Now we're going to do a revolved base. And we're going to revolve my derived sketch. Around this axis. Going to go blind, go 360 degrees, and we're going to say OK. And there we have it. A ball joint. Let's save our work. I was trying to figure out how to make that plane go away, but it's not hurting anything. Let's go ahead and fillet those internal edges by adding fillets. I'm now on page 5-17. So I'm going to fillet this guy and that guy. And I want a fillet dimension of 0.1 inches. And I want okay, that looks pretty good. Let's go ahead and say OK. And yes, that is what my ball joint should look like. And I'm going to save this. And we are done. So that's it for creating the center ball joint. Go ahead now and work on the activities that I've assigned for Chapter 5, Week 2. And I will talk to you again soon. Bye now.